Perfect. Well, good. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for sharing your awesome summer trips. Someone just posted could recite. That's funny. One of our former employees, Kelly. Yep, remembering when my older boy could recite movie lines for us in the office. He was probably like 2.5, 3 years old, reciting, I don't know, Nemo or something's along those lines. That's great. I love it.
Yeah,
Oh, look at that. Maui, Poland, Thailand. Wow, Terry, that is awesome.
that's a great summer.
Yep. Well, good. Thank you all for joining us. Session 8, our final session of the Konik Leadership series. So I'm Brad Konik, CEO of Konik Technical Talent Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our company, Konik is a technical recruiting firm based out of Minneapolis. We've placed over 30,000 candidates across the Midwest mainly, but also even expanded out across the US. So right here, we specialize in engineering, manufacturing, and AEC to include architecture and construction. On our team, we have over 100 years of combined recruiting experience. And my big pitch is that you take the network that we've been building over the last 49 years, we'll be celebrating 50 years next year. You take that network and you plug that experience that we have on our recruiting team into that network, and you've really kind of supercharged your recruiting efforts. So we place candidates on a contract or temporary basis, contract to direct and also direct. So if you're interested in learning how we might be able to help, we'll post a link to our website, which is koniknetwork.com. That'll be in the chat box. A little bit more about our company. I think probably even more importantly and closer to my heart is our core purpose, which is to positively impact people's lives. This includes our clients, our candidates, our community, and our network as a whole. So it was to this purpose that we decided to offer up the Konik Leadership Series at no charge to our entire network. And so whether this is your first session or whether you've been with us for all 8, I want to thank you for participating in the Leadership Series. I know I've had a great time facilitating, and I've had some great takeaways and some things that I've turned around and immediately implemented within our company. So I hope most of you and all of you can say the same thing. As Adam mentioned, and we talked about earlier on, if you missed it, anytime during the presentation, feel free to post questions into the Q&A box. Please note there is a chat box and there's a Q&A box. So if you can drop the questions into the Q&A box, and as appropriate as the presentation goes on, I'll present those to Adam, get those addressed. Otherwise, I'll queue them up. And then we do have a Q&A session immediately following Adam's presentation. So please stick around if you can for that. That'd be great to have you. So with that, I'll introduce our presenter, Adam Carrol. Adam's been with us for all 8 sessions. We're excited to have him here again today. He is the founder of Renzo Experience, which is a leadership consulting a leadership development and culture consulting firm based out of the Midwest. And Adam, has worked with thousands of leaders to create that clarity and alignment within their organization. So he's a 2-time TED Talk speaker, one of which has surpassed 6 million views on YouTube. I always like to throw that out there, which is pretty impressive. Excited about today's topic, which is creating the level 10 leadership, having level 10 leadership in your organization and also in your life. So with that, Adam, I'll turn it over to you. I'll keep a close eye on the Q&A box. I'll turn my camera off. If you see it pop on, I've got a question or a comment for you.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Brad. And thanks to all of you for showing up today for the Level 10 Leadership session. I am super excited about sharing this with everyone because, candidly, this stuff is near and dear to my heart. It's been work that I have practiced, I have studied, I have tried to implement as much as possible in my day. And I'm excited to share it with all of you to make your day better and to make you a better leader. One of the things that I have found to be true with all of these sessions that we did through the Konik Network Leadership Series is that every one of the sessions is like a vitamin for leaders. And we all need to be taking our vitamins. It's one thing to get wrapped up in the day-to-day doing it of our work. And it's another to kind of pull back and be very, very intentional about how we show up for our teams, how we plan our day, how we communicate, set expectations, create clarity, align our team, all of the topics that we've covered over the last several sessions. And so today, the topic is level 10 leadership, as you can see from the slide. And I want to mention, if you were an EOS firm, if you're a company using the entrepreneurial operating system that was written about by Gino Wickman in the book called Traction, he talks about level 10 meetings. And level 10 meetings are following a certain cadence. They start on time, they end on time. The agenda is the same each week. And the goal of it is, at the end of a meeting, you would score the meeting on a scale of 1 to 10. This is a little bit different in that it's really about how do you show up as a leader to be a level 10 leader. And candidly, a lot of this came from a book that was given to me by a gentleman years and years and years ago. And actually, I got it, I think, right after I had graduated from high school, maybe even my first couple of years in college. The book is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And this is the actual book jacket of the book that I was given. You can see this is copy number 469,143. The book itself today looks a little bit different. It looks like this is probably how you'll see it. It's got a red and a white book jacket as well. But to this day, it shows up on lots and lots of lists as one of the best-selling books of all time. Now, you may be wondering, what is the best-selling book of all time? Throw it in the chat box if you know what it is. Some of you may know this. The best-selling book of all time is... some good guesses. It's 50 Shades of Grey. No, I'm just kidding. It is the Bible. It is the Bible. Y'all are right. The Bible is best-selling. And believe it or not, the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita are 2 and 3, if you look at religious texts. And then it goes on from there. Well, Harry Potter actually, that whole series ranks right up there in some of the top best-selling books of all time. But How to Win Friends and Influence People, in terms of nonfiction, non-religious text, this is one of the best-selling books in that category of all time. And this book itself was given to me by my grandfather, who was an iconic guy in his own right. He ran for the governor of the state of Iowa in 1973, before I was born. But his campaign platform was to legalize marijuana, prostitution, and gambling. Now let that sink in. 1973, he wanted to legalize marijuana, prostitution, and gambling. He was very progressive, as you might imagine. He did not win in the primaries, and he ended up being in the House of Representatives and the Senate in Iowa. He was just an iconic guy in his own right. And he would tell me quite often, Adam, you need to live your life at a level 10. And I didn't really know what that meant. He handed me the book. He told me, live your life at a level 10. And in this book, it talks about remembering people's names, being interested, not interesting, writing handwritten thank you notes whenever you meet someone. All of those were great, but I never really knew what he meant when he said live a level 10 life. And it wasn't until I started having kids and my children were young. My wife was working 2 or 3 days a week, and the 2 or 3 days she was working were my mornings to get my boys out the door and up the sidewalk to the elementary school. And as many of us are probably prone to do, the very first thing when I woke up, I reached for my phone and I started sifting through emails. And there was an email from a client who was having some issue and needed assistance. So in the midst of my morning with my boys, getting them up and running, I'm emailing back and forth with a client on my phone and trying to do my fatherly duties at the same time. Now, I don't know about all of you, but there are some mornings where your kids just aren't that cooperative. Give me an amen if you want, if you've ever had one of those days in the chat box. So this particular morning, I'm being a business guy, trying to respond to emails and get something sorted for a client. And I'm trying to be a father and not being a very good one. There was a lot of like, come on, guys, stop messing with each other. Just bust your dishes. Why are you dawdling? Go do this. Stop picking on the dog. A lot of that kind of stuff. And I remember distinctly that time of my life with my boys. We had this routine, and the routine was as they were walking towards or out the door, I would say, guys, be good to your friends, be good to your teachers. It's cool to be brilliant. And remember, and they would say, leaders lead. I'd say every day. And that was our thing every morning. I'd say, be good to your friends, be good to your teachers. It's cool to be brilliant. And remember, they'd say, leaders lead. Well, this particular morning, after lots of shuffling and trying to thwart them fighting each other, I drove them up to the sidewalk where they were to get out to go to school. And I literally turned around to back to the both of them and I said, get out of my car. I just want you gone. I want you to be somebody else's problem. And they got out and I said, I love you. Have a good day. And they walk up the sidewalk. But I was watching them walk up the sidewalk together. And my one son's dribbling his basketball. And he's talking to his brother. And I imagine them saying to each other, man, dad was such a jerk today. Now, I don't know if they said it, but that was what I had in my head. And it occurred to me in the moment, this may have been what my granddad was talking about in living a level 10 life. Now, my son, my older son, who's my middle child, we have 3 kids. He is my sensitive one. And I have heard if you have 3 children or you are a child of 3, you are a child of 3 kids in a family, that there is always a leader, a lover, and a lunatic. You can decide which one either you are in your family order or which ones your kids are. But there is always a leader, a lover, and a lunatic. And my middle child, my oldest son, is my lover. He's a very sensitive soul. He's almost empathic. If you have a child that's, middle born, they tend to understand when there is tension between siblings or parents, and they tend to be a bit of a peacekeeper. Well, that's my son, Nolan. And this particular morning, I realized that when I had left Nolan, and I imagined Nolan saying, man, dad was such a jerk today. Nolan was feeling my stress and he was pulling it on himself as his stress. And the challenge with that was I figured I probably left Nolan at about a level 4. And if I leave my son Nolan at a level 4 when he was in elementary school, then what might happen that day is he would encounter a level 5 problem. And a level 5 problem could have been a pop quiz in math. It could have been his friends didn't invite him to sit with them at lunch. It could be any number of things. But immediately he becomes smaller than his problem. And there were times when he was in elementary school, we'd get a call that he was having a rough day or he just needed to talk to one of us. And essentially what I realized was we were not leaving him at a level 10. Whatever was happening in the morning was stressing him out or not getting him ready. He's much better now. He's in college. He's fully functioning and all that. But I realized that my goal should be to leave him at a 7 or higher and ideally at a 10. And so I drove home that morning and I thought about what do my boys love to do in the morning? How can I create a level 10 morning so that they always start at a level 10? And my list contained things like they love to play basketball. So I put a Nerf basketball hoop in the kitchen and we would shoot hoops while we were eating cereal. They love to listen to music. So I created a killer playlist on my phone that's attached to a Bluetooth speaker. And we would listen to dance music for 17 minutes in the morning. And it was, things like Kesha and 50 Cent, Into Club and The Club Can't Handle Me and Panic at the Disco and all these great tunes that are lots of energy. A lot of club songs, candidly. My wife doesn't love it. But the point is that they had all sorts of fun in the morning. And I would say, what are you excited about today? And I would give them my pitch. Hey, be good to your friends, be good to your teachers. It's cool to be brilliant. And remember, and they would say leaders lead. And I would take them up to the sidewalk and away they went. And I knew that if I orchestrated my day like that every day, and I left my boys at a level 10, that they would go have a level 10 day. And then I started thinking about what would it look like for us to define our days so that we could start our day at a level 10. Because the reality for most of us is if we hit snooze too many times in the morning, we wake up delayed, we're behind the 8 ball on time while we're showering and getting ready, and oh crap, I forgot to write my to-do list for the morning. Then all of a sudden we get to work or we start our day and maybe we're at a level 8 or a 7. And then you have that one client call, that one client who just it just takes it out of you. And now you're a 5 and it's not even noon yet. And throughout the afternoon, you start to dwindle because we all have depleting buckets throughout the day, whether it's energy or it's focus or it's decision making, all of these things, patience, curiosity, all of these things begin to dwindle throughout the day. So the question for you all is, how do you begin to create your day and design your morning so that you have a level 10 morning? You design what your midday routine is. So you create a level 10 midday and you have a level 10 afternoon or late afternoon that allows you to go home to your family and still be at a relatively high level. Because you do your clients no good, your family no good, your company no good if you're ending your day at a level 2 or a level 1. So how do you start your day at a level 10? So no matter what, if you have a level 9 or a level 1 problem, you're always bigger than your problem. So I'm going to pose a question to you, and this is where the interactive portion of today's webinar comes in. I'm going to have you think about this for about 30 seconds. And then I'd like you to just type in the chat box, what are some of your answers? What would you need to do? So the question that I'm going to pose is this, and I want you to think about it, maybe jot a couple answers down in front of you, and then type them in the chat box so we can see what they are. The question is this: what would need to be different for you in your world right now to guarantee a level 10 every morning? So if you knew that when you showed up for work, you are at a level 10, meaning energy high, positivity, high on decision-making ability, everything's a level 10 for you, energetic, focus, clarity, what would need to be different for you to guarantee a level 10 every single morning? Not to start at a 7 or an 8, but at a level 10. What would it take? I'm going to give you like 30 seconds to jot something down, and then I'd love to see what your answers are in the chat box. All right, this is great. David says plenty of sleep. Nick says attitude, proper and adequate sleep the night before, exercise, sleep, wake up early enough to make breakfast at home, a proper breakfast. That sounds like an English breakfast, a proper breakfast, right? English breakfast. I like that. End your day well, ability to go to sleep an hour more and still get in a great workout, fully restful sleep, a problem to solve, interesting, morning workout or yoga session, physically and mentally prepared, and an understanding of the day ahead and some plan for it. All of these are really great answers. And I want to touch on a couple of them, and then I'll give you some resources. So know that I'm going to share some books with you shortly. And if you are a reader, you may just want to open Amazon right now and hit one-click ship on some of these books. I want to talk about sleep very quickly. So if someone says I need more sleep or I need different sleep, I would argue people need better and different sleep. They don't necessarily need more, because you may not be able to get more. You may not be able to have a schedule that allows for more sleep, particularly if you have young kids at home. But different and better sleep might look like this. Every 90 minutes, we go through a circadian rhythm when we sleep. And the circadian rhythm is a restorative, regenerative sleep cycle. And as many of those as we can get in a night, the better. But we need to maintain a 90-minute sleep schedule. So I've been doing this for about 15 years. I studied sleep and sleep habits for about 2 years solid, trying to figure out how to optimize my level of sleep, what I needed, how cool the room needed to be, my pre-sleep routine, all of those things. And what I realized was sleeping in 90-minute intervals was critical. So I was going to sleep in 4.5, 6 hours, 7.5, 9 hours, 10.5 hours, or if you're sleeping 12 hours, you're in a coma, you should call your doctor. You probably have COVID. No one should sleep for 12 hours. That's sleeping too much. But if you sleep 4.5 or 6 or 7.5 or 9 or 10.5, you're getting good, restful, relaxing sleep, restorative, regenerative sleep. So for some of you that are waking up at 7 hours or 8 hours, you are not at a level 10 because you're probably going to reach over and hit snooze automatically because your body's in the middle of a restorative, regenerative sleep cycle. But if you woke up at 7.5 or you woke up at 6, your eyes would pop right open and you'd be wide awake. So again, been doing this for 15 years. I sleep in 6 or 7.5 hour increments. And when I go to sleep, I'll say to myself, 6 hours feels like 9, 6 hours feels like 9, or 7.5 feels like 10.5, 7.5 feels like 10.5. And your brain doesn't know the difference really. It's getting this restorative, regenerative sleep. So those of you who said sleep, great, try it, see what you think. Those of you that said, mornings need to be different, I would encourage you to get really dialed into what needs to be different every morning. And here's where the resources come in. The reason that this is such a big deal, Dr. Wayne Dyer had this saying that you can't give away what you don't have. And you can't give away as a leader energetically, vision, focus, decision-making ability, patience. You can't give that away if you don't have it. And the reason we have to be really strategic about how we're structuring our mornings and our evenings the night before, candidly, is if we are not intentional about that, our day just occurs. And you've probably had days where you get to the end of the day and you're like, I could have been way more efficient. I should have gotten a lot more done today. I just didn't have my ducks in a row. That is because there is no intentionality or routine the night before the morning of that sets yourself on a path to being a level 10. Your team, to get the most out of them, needs the most that you can give them. And that would be starting at a level 10. So here's how we do that. I'm going to give you 3 book titles. Any one of these 3 would be great to get you started on the right path. There's a book called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And Hal, I interviewed on a podcast some time ago. He basically said there are these things called savers every day that you're going to want to focus on. Apologies, my phone's ringing. It will stop in a moment. The savers are silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. And when we do these 6 things every morning, it changes the way that our day occurs. Okay, good. It's done. So silence, spending time in silence every morning, affirmations, I am focused and devoted to the work that I'm going to get done today, saying the kind of I am statements that you need to say. Visualization is imagining your day. At the end of the day, what would make it successful? So imagine getting into bed at the end of the day today and visualizing what a successful day was like, and then living according to that vision. Exercise, many of you mentioned, starting the day with exercise or carving in time for exercise every day. Reading, Hal would say reading the good book, right? Read the Bible or read some work that is meant to inspire or to educate you. And then last is scribing. It's journaling your feelings, thoughts, emotions for the day. Now, the beautiful part about the Miracle Morning is these 6 things could be 5 minutes. They could be 2 minutes. They could be 10 minutes. It could be 20 minutes each. It's up to you and how much time you want to take in the morning. But if you get in the habit of doing this day after day after day, it begins to create a level 10 morning where you're fully ready to go, energized, excited, focused for the day, etc. The second book I'll give you is a book called The 5 a.m. Club. And this was written by a guy named Robin Sharma. He also wrote a book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. So some cool books that he writes. Many of them are fable-based. And essentially, the 5 a.m. Club involves these 3 tasks. Rise at 5 a.m., spend 20 minutes of exercise, because the first thing your body does when you wake up is hit the floor and start doing exercise. 20 minutes of working on plans, goals, and dreams. 20 minutes of learning. If you do this 20-20-20 formula for 66 days, it becomes a habit. And if you were to join the 5 a.m. Club and do this 20-20-20 philosophy, your life has this magical transformation in the process. Now, if 5 a.m. and the thought of 5 a.m. makes you throw up in your mouth a little bit, because I know there are people out there who could not do this, then I want to encourage the next book, which is a book called Atomic Habits. It was written by a guy named James Clear. James, I met at a conference, and he's a brilliant, brilliant dude, very strategic and intentional about what he does. And he approaches habit forming and high performance from a little bit different standpoint. If you're going to create a level 10 morning, according to James, then forget about setting goals for yourself. Focus on your systems instead. So what are you doing the night before, the morning of? What little systems are you plugging in? What he would call atomic habits, because atoms make up everything. The atomic habits that you're creating are the building blocks of your level 10 morning. So these are 3 books. Pick any one of them that might appeal to you if you want to increase or improve your level of focus, accountability, energy, decision-making, et cetera, in the morning. I started using tidbits from each of these 3, and my mornings are structured in a way that they're very routinized. I would even call them rituals. So when we talk about habits, we've formed habits. Like if you're right-handed, you're probably washing your left armpit first. That's a habit. And look, now some of you are trying to figure out, well, I do wash my left armpit first in the morning. That's a habit. A ritual is something that you cannot not do before moving on with your day. And what we want to do is we want to create rituals around our morning. Like I have a ritual now that I get up at 4:32 in the morning. And when I get up at 4:32, there's a reason behind my insanity, but I think to myself, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So my alarm goes off on my Apple Watch at 4:32, so as not to disrupt my wife. I immediately say 4, 3, 2, 1, go. My feet hit the floor and I start my morning ritual. That ritual has a series of steps that leads me to about 7 a.m. starting my day, but starting at a level 10. I feel good. I'm happy. I'm ready to go. I know exactly what the 3 top things I need to do for the day are. And I've done that through these systems. In addition to that, my team knows what their top 3 things are based on what I have for them. That's all part of level 10 as well. So hopefully this helps a little bit in deciding how to go about doing these things. Here's why it's critical. And I mentioned that we're setting rituals for a level 10 morning, we're setting rituals for a level 10 afternoon, and a level 10 evening. And the reason it's so important, if you are a leader, if you have a team of people who look to you, it is said that we will have 80,000 interactions in our lifetime. So the average 40-year-old person has probably had half of their lifetime interactions so far, leading them to the end of their life where they'll end up with somewhere around 80,000 interactions, give or take. And there's a good friend of mine who's a researcher around connection. And he says that the question you should be asking yourself is, how many of those interactions would be memorable? How many would actually remember the interaction that they had with you? And he goes on to say, how many of them would then say, this was a positive interaction that I had with you? If we are functioning at a level 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, logic would say that our interactions with people when we're performing at a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 are not positive. They're probably neutral or negative, meaning that our team who is trying to get something from us might know, like, let's avoid Brad this morning. Not to pick on Brad here, but Brad, people probably know if you've had a bad morning, like, let Brad simmer a little bit. He needs his coffee, maybe needs a Mountain Dew before the afternoon. We all have that in our world. People know, like, just avoid for a bit because they're not at a level 10. Furthermore, if you and your team start to define where is everybody at today on a 1 to 10 scale, and someone says, I'm a 6 this morning, then the team has the ability to give them some grace in the interactions because they're not performing at a level 10. And as a leader, you could say, what do you need to do to get to a level 10? Candidly, some companies now are putting in mindfulness rooms and meditation rooms and saying, if you're not at a 10, go meditate for 10 minutes and get back to a level 10 so that we can actually start to have, meaningful dialogue. Okay. So 80,000 interactions. And I want to share with you, when I learned this and I learned the process of living at a level 10, one of the things to stay at a level 10 is to manage your expectations. And so I want to share with you a story. First of all, we're a Ted Lasso family. Hopefully we got some Ted Lasso fans in the group. In our family, Ted Lasso is life. It was an amazing philosophical show, brilliantly acted. And Ted Lasso's, famous saying was, be like a goldfish. And be like a goldfish was really critical for my son, my 15-year-old son, who's playing golf. For those of you that are golfers, it's like one of the most mental games there is. And my son, in watching him play in tournaments, it was very clear that the last shot was influencing the present shot. And when we watched Ted Lasso together, I said, Davis, there you go. You need to be like a goldfish. And he kind of got it. We started talking about it a little bit more. But imagine if all of us having a level 10 day could be like a goldfish. Put it another way, this is what happens. We're put in a mood. And I want to ask you all point blank, how many of you have ever been put in a bad mood by someone at work? And you can just put me in the chat if you want. How many of you have ever been put in a bad mood by someone at work? Point blank. Good. And if you want to add the person's name that put you there, that would also be helpful. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that. They might also be on this webinar. Okay, so we've been put in a bad mood, right? And the reality is that when we get in a bad mood, some of us also carry that mood through the day. And as a level 10 leader, the goal is to short circuit that, to be like a goldfish, to forget quickly. The be like a goldfish mentality, by the way, is that goldfish have the shortest attention span and memory of any animal. So when you are like a goldfish, you don't remember what just happened, so you can't let it affect you. We tend to carry our mood with us. And if we carry it long enough through the day, maybe into the next day or through that week, it begins to become our temperament. And if our temperament is kept long enough, people begin to see it as our personality. So in being like a goldfish, one of the things that we have to do is we have to begin to shorten our emotional reaction time. If you are a level 10 leader and something immediately triggers you and it changes your mood, the goal should be, how do you shorten your emotional reaction time as quickly as possible so that you are not taking your mood through the rest of the day, creating your temperament and your personality, but instead, people are okay to come to you and give you bad news because you can assess it, you can shorten your emotional reaction time, you can ask questions, and you can move on. Level 10 leaders don't let themselves go from a 10 to a 4 or a 10 to a 1 like that. They have strategies that allow them, when something hits them and they're triggered by it, they either collect themselves, they ask questions, they might journal what their response is, think through, how am I going to respond to this non-emotionally? But you've got to shorten your emotional reaction time. So as I mentioned, one of the tricks of the trade is to lower your expectations about how something is going to go. And so one day I was flying through Philadelphia, and I'd spoken at a conference the day before, and I was flying out the next morning. And I woke up for a 5 a.m. flight. Now, Philly is known as the city of brotherly love, but there was not a lot of brotherly love in Philly in the airport at 5 a.m. in the morning. But I had conditioned myself early on. It was rainy in Philly, it was rainy in Chicago, and it was overcast in the Midwest, where I was flying into. And I immediately thought, I better temper my expectations for the day. Instead of thinking, oh, I'm going to make it, my expectation is I'm going to get delayed. I possibly won't make it today, but I am definitely going to find the funny in everything that happens. So if you want to shorten your emotional reaction time, find the funny in every situation, because when your mind's looking for something humorous, it doesn't have time to be pissed off. It's a little trick of the trade. So I started my day thinking, I'm going to find the funny. And I was reminded of this equation that I was taught by a mentor of mine. And the equation you've probably seen on like high school or youth football team jerseys, E plus R equals O. And the E stands for event. When an event happens, if you combine that with your response, then you can control the outcome. E plus R equals O. And the idea here being that when we own whatever our response or reaction is to anything, we can then somewhat control the outcome. But if we react, we don't proact or respond, then the outcome is not going to be what we wanted it to be, right? So I'll give you a case in point study of this. Event plus response equals outcome. Finding the funny, trying to stay at a level 10. I walk into the Philadelphia airport and I go right to TSA, and I have to go through the magnetometer. Now, this is just a general photo of Philadelphia airport, but I don't know about all of you, but I don't necessarily think that TSA agents love their job. I'm not sure anyone is like purposefully doing the work of a TSA agent. I think they like the time off and the benefits, and it's government, so it's steady work and all of that. But I wouldn't say they love them some TSA. You know what I mean? This particular TSA rep that I met at 5 a.m. in the Philly airport loved him some TSA. And that morning he was going to catch a perp, and that perp was me. So I stand in the magnetometer. I was wearing a pair of travel pants, and I knew that the zipper on the back pocket was going to set him off. And of course it did. And he said, "Sir, stand right here on these yellow footprints." And so I go and I stood there. And again, I'm keeping in mind, today's going to be weird. Find the funny, lower expectations. And this TSA rep, he said something that I've never heard any agent of TSA ever say to anyone. And I've been through thousands of airports in my career. He said to me, "Sir, you have an anomaly in your buttocks area." And he said it as stern and serious as you can imagine. "You have an anomaly in your buttocks area." And my thought was, no one's ever said that to me before. That's kind of funny. And I'm kind of finding the funny in it in my mind. And he said, "Sir, sir." And I said, "Yes, I heard you. Is it serious?" Because I'm trying to find the funny. And his friends, his other TSA coworkers, are chuckling. And he is like Stone Cold Steve Austin, locked in. He's about to bust me. And he said, "Sir, I'm going to have to wand you." And I said, "Okay." And he goes, "Do you want to get wanded here or in private?" And again, I'm thinking, I've never, ever been asked this question before. But I said, "What kind of wand is it?" Because again, I'm trying to find the funny. Again, laughter from his tribe. He is straight laced, not having it. So he comes over, he wands me again. And he says, "It appears you have a zipper on your back pocket. You're free to go." And I chuckled about that for a good long 15 or 20 minutes afterwards. And I would imagine that anyone else that went through that met this guy at 5 a.m. in the morning, tired, rainy day, facing a day of travel from, where, they would not walk away smiling or happy. So I walked next to an Oban Pan in the airport. And there's a young lady named Rebecca standing behind the counter, and she's got a visor slung down low over her eyes. And every person that comes up, she says, "Can I help you? Can I help you? Can I help you?" And the people in line are looking at each other and giving each other knowing glances like, "Can you believe this?" And she's helping people, albeit not very quickly. And I walk up and I get to Rebecca, and she says, "Can I help you?" under her visor. And I said, "You can, but first, Rebecca, how are you?" And she looked up at me as if I had, A, that no one had ever called her by name before, and B, that I'd said something in Greek. And she goes, "I'm tired." And I go, "I bet you are. How early did you have to be here this morning?" And she said, "I got here at 4:45. And I said, "Oh man, that's early. But the good news is, right, you get out early. So what do you leave here by noon or 12:30? And she goes, "Yeah, noon, but I have a 1 o'clock community college class." And she's answering these questions. And I could tell the people behind me were like, "Yo, let's go, Johnny Appleseed. Why are you asking all these questions?" And then I said, "I'm sorry, I need a coffee and a bagel with cream cheese." And so she rings me up and I pay. And I said, "Hey, keep it up. You're doing awesome work. Thanks for being here at 4:45. And I give her a little knuckle bash and I walk away. And the very next person that came to her line, I heard in her voice something change. And she said, "Hi, how can I help you?" Completely different countenance. Her mood had changed, her attitude had changed. And I'm not saying I have that profound power over people, but we all, as leaders, are touching people and changing the energy at which they show up every day. Whether we know it or not, if we show up at a 10, it's good. If we show up at a 2, it's not. And whether we know it or not, that is happening on a day-by-day basis. Some of this is based on a book called A Happy Pocket Full of Money. And this is one of my favorite books of all time. I think I mentioned it even in a different session. But the idea of this book, which has very little to do with money and almost entirely to do with quantum physics. The first 2 chapters are a bit of a slog, but I know we got some very intellectual folks on this webinar. So if you are a reader and you love to be challenged with scientific ideas, then go read this book and learn how quantum physics is working in your world, like the particle wave duality and all of that of energy. In this book, basically, it asserts that we are constantly creating that which we'd like to experience, and oftentimes that which we don't, like that which we don't want to experience. We are still creating that. And so the idea summed up very simply is this, that our world and the environment around us is like a body of water, and we are constantly tapping the body of water with our fingertips. And as we do, ripples go out and ripples come back. And the ripples that we have when we're a level 10 leader, they go out positively. But if we're a level 1 that day, the ripples that go out, they bring back negative stuff. It's not exactly what we want. And, granted, there's a lot that's been written about, talked about around mental health today, and specifically over the last 3 years after COVID, quarantine, lack of contribution, lack of connection. There's a lot that's been written about mental health, but not a lot has been written about how we as leaders can begin to impact the people on our team by making sure that our days are performing at high performance levels. And we can do that. We can help our team do that, but they have to see us do it first. So as we touch that water and the ripples go out, let's create these positive ripples in the process. Here are a couple of secrets of how to do that. So when I mentioned you have to shorten your emotional reaction time, there are really 2 ways that we can react to any situation. So if someone comes to you, they're frustrated, they have a challenge, they're asking you to solve a problem, or maybe it's an employee, rub between 2 people on your team. There's only one of 2 ways you can look at it. You can be curious or you can be furious. And curiosity is like an upward spiral producing emotion. If you are curious as a practice, and what that means is anytime something happens, your initial gut reaction is to ask questions. Tell me more about that. Help me understand. Please explain what happened before. Say more. All these kinds of questions help you create this curiosity. And curiosity, as I mentioned, is an upward spiral. Being furious immediately takes you in a downward spiral in terms of the energy of emotions. So if I'm furious and I start to notice all of the cracks in the armor, all of the things that are wrong about that person or the topic or the initiative, those things become very present to me. So you have only 2 ways of approaching things. You can be curious or you can be furious. Think about it at home. Your child does something that you don't like. You can be curious or you can be furious. And when you understand this, the curiosity leads to you asking things like, what would happen if you always assumed positive intent from your team, from your vendors, from your clients? What would happen if you always assumed positive intent? The idea that no one's out to get you, nothing's happening to you, everything is happening for you. What is the positive intent you could put behind every single situation? And I understand some of this may seem a little Pollyanna, but what is really interesting in companies that create curiosity as a core value or a fundamental of what they do, they don't have problems at their company. They have challenges that are created, but the challenges are easily overcome because they figure out the solutions to challenges. People that create problems or are frustrated by problems and take you in this downward spiral emotion, there will just be more and more problems. So what would happen if you always assumed positive intent with your team, with your kids, with your significant other, partners, right? Clients? Just assume positive intent. What are they trying to do that would be positive on their end as they're getting upset about this, that, and the other? This is part of that curiosity, being curious, not furious. One of the other areas of curiosity is, was I clear in my expectations? Was I clear if someone didn't do what I wanted them to do? And that creates some frustration for us, candidly. The curiosity that we can create that puts you in an upward spiral is, was I clear in my expectations? What didn't they know? Where did they get maybe an alternative set of information that led them down this path that they're on now? But the curiosity begins to kind of dial back to figure out the challenge of how did we get off track together? If we go in the Wayback Machine at some of the first and second sessions that we did in the leadership series, it was all about clarity and alignment. clarity and alignment. And when there's a lack of clarity or we are out of alignment, it can often create frustrations for people. And so again, we can be curious or we can be furious. And our goal is to constantly go back to that curiosity and ask questions. I've shared this before. It's worth mentioning again. This is worth tattooing on your arm or putting as a bumper sticker on your car. Uncommunicated expectations are just pre-planned resentments. This was said, I'm sure, by a very wise marriage therapist. When I said that one of the things that I do is I minimize my expectations, I will almost always be pleasantly surprised when someone lives up to the high bar that they have for themselves or I might have set, right? But uncommunicated expectations are just pre-planned resentments. Super important to note. I want to give you a couple of core takeaways for the session today. And I know we have a little bit of time, we always do, for Q&A. So if you're thinking of questions or wondering, how do I create this level 10 in my morning, my afternoon, my evening, how might I do that? Let's talk through that as some of the question and answer session here. One of the core takeaways I want to give you is this: people don't leave companies, they leave people. This was said to me by a mentor years ago. And he said, whenever someone leaves my company, I take it as a personal affront because they're leaving me. They're not leaving my company. And in his exit interview, he would sit down with them and he would say, what didn't we do to keep you here? What could we have done differently that would make you still excited about coming to work every day here, as opposed to going somewhere else? And he really wanted to know, what were the things that differentiated the experience with that company than somewhere else, to make sure that he kept this talent always in place. So just keep in mind, people don't leave companies, they leave people. And one of my favorite questions to ask is, when is the best time to tell your spouse you love them? And I get lots of answers. Oh, after you fight, or before you go to bed, or every day. And the real answer is before someone else does, right? The best time to tell your spouse you love them is before someone else does. And the same is true of your people. So if you're at a level 10, you're noticing the great things they do. You're commenting on it. You're celebrating them. You're lavish with praise and quick to appreciate. You're less likely to do that when you're a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we got to maintain that 10 status, keep it at a level 10, and figure out how to lead at a level 10 on a day-by-day basis. With that, Brad, I'm turning this back over to you to see if we have any questions.
All right. I haven't seen any posted yet, but I'm sure there will be some coming. One of the things I'm gonna share, Adam, you and I haven't even talked about this, but in discussing today, you mentioned, leading at a level 10, living at a level 10. A big part of it is that mind shift and the time, the reaction time, I think you referred to. So I'm going to share a link in the chat box. And I'd highly recommend everyone just going and investigating this. It's to an app. The company's One Perfect, and it's a mental shift based approach, where basically you download the app. There's a small fee involved, for like annual. I think it's like maybe $40, $50 for the annual deal, but it's in less than 10 minutes. It's a meditation and support, pre-recorded messages, where you go in and you select what your current mental state of mind is: anger, frustration, lack of motivation, can't sleep. And it walks you through, and then it has a pre-recorded sort of message where it gets you into that sort of Zen moment, brings you back grounded to where you are. And I've been using it a lot. And again, it takes anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes. And it's a great way to make a quick mental shift. So when you mentioned that, I thought, there's a tool that I want to share with the group. So I posted the link to the chat box. So, please check that out.
That's awesome, Brad. Yeah, I love tools like that. And I think that, each of us probably has our own way of dealing with, oh gosh, I'm at a level 6, or I just dipped into the 4s and I need to get back. Mine is calm.com. If I go into the Calm app and I meditate for 10 minutes with rainfall in my ears, I immediately feel better. So I'm sure everyone has their own thing, but part of the key of living and leading at a level 10 is knowing I'm drooping and I'm going to go carve out X amount of time to go do this. There's a program that I do on work-life balance and burnout, and we tend to teeter-totter between work and burnout, instead of work and rest, work and rest. And I think some of living at a level 10, and certainly right now, we're being asked to do a lot with a little. There's more and more being requested of people with fewer resources. And so realizing that if I'm feeling overwhelmed, and we chatted about this kind of pre-roll in the webinar, but there's this bell curve of the perfect amount of stress that allows you to be very productive at work. And if you don't have enough stuff to do, you're probably less productive. And if you do, you're overworked and burdened. But what is that ideal amount? And how can you begin to scale back some of that? Because the minute we're over the bell curve on the wrong side, we're not going to live at a level 10 or lead at a level 10. We'll be at 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah.
One question, what do you ask your team members every day? Where are you at on a scale of 1? You mentioned a scenario in which you ask, and if someone says, I'm at a 4 or 5, then you say, okay,
Yep.
well, what do you need to do to get you back to a 10? Do you need to go just meditate, relax? Do you need to go for a walk? What do you need to do? Is this an exercise that you do within your organization every single day, or is it case by case? You see someone, and if you feel like they're not performing at a level 10, then you inquire?
Yeah. This is a great question. And I would say it's an everyday thing on the days that I talk to my team. So if I'm not connecting with them, I'm not necessarily checked in, but we do level 10s, the EOS level 10s, L10 meetings. And so on those, the very first thing I do, and I learned this from another mentor of mine, he was leading transformational training meetings. And at the beginning, he would say, everyone close your eyes. On a scale of 1 to 5, hold up your fingers and tell me where your self-esteem is today. Now, this may seem a little woo-woo and touchy-feely, but the whole idea was he would be more gentle on someone that was at a 1 or a 2, and more like quick to the point if someone was a 5 on self-esteem. So with my team, I'll say, hey, scale of 1 to 10, where are you guys today on energy level, optimism, decision-making, et cetera? Just give me a scale. How do you feel today? I have a really, really profoundly connected team that most of them are an 8, 9, or a 10. But recently I had someone who their dog had surgery, and she was tending to the dog and caring for it post-surgery, and the dog ended up passing away. And she's like, I'm at a 3. I lost a family member. And she didn't have any kids. She's lived with these dogs for 15 years. She still has one. The other one had died. And for me, like, my heart goes out to them. I can't expect her to function at a high level on that day when she's going through that. But as a level 10 leader, I can hear it, and I can appreciate why maybe a call or 2 is rescheduled. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you worked with organizations and you're looking at creating, I'd say starting the day off at a level 10.
Yeah.
What do you feel has had the most impact? Has it been spending some time and really getting to understand the sleep patterns? Is it that initial morning ritual? And obviously, in an ideal world, great. We're doing it all. We're nailing it, and it sounds like, over the last 15 years, you've developed this process where it's a ritual, not just a habit. But what have you found to have the most immediate impact?
Yeah, this is such a good question. It will be different for everyone. So you've got some people that when they come into work first thing, they go right to their to-do list and they start knocking it out. They're more task focused. You have some people that are more emotive, that they go right to build relationships right away. So they're, hitting the coffee station and then going from cube to cube or office to office and chatting with people. So whatever your thing is great. But I think what's moved the needle most with companies when we start to implement this is, number one, realizing that we are asking people to be corporate athletes. That's effectively who we are, what we do every day. When we show up to work, we are corporate athletes. And the distinction or difference between corporate athletes and professional athletes is professional athletes have a high work to rest ratio. Like Steph Curry takes a 3-hour nap every afternoon. And if you or I made $36 million a year, we would too. but um, but the reality is that he goes and he works really hard, and then he goes and he rests so that he can go work really hard. And as corporate athletes, what we do is we work really hard so that we can work really hard. And there's never really that structured part of the day where you go, no, I need to go take 15 minutes and walk around the lake around our office so then I can get my mind right and get back to a level 10 so I don't jump on Jim's case for, cooking fish in the microwave.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And the other thing is not only work and work, but it's work and play too. You work hard and you have a certain amount of time, and whether it's kids, whether it's dogs, whether it's, it's like you want to go out, you're meeting friends for dinner, like you want to take advantage of the time away from work. And then, it all of a sudden you don't get that time. I know that I find myself in a sleep and rest deficit because I'm an extrovert and I get tons of energy from people, but it's carving out the time to find that balance. So we do have a question here. Terry, thanks for posting. Talking about that interaction with the airport, the gal from Obo and Penn, which by the way has, I don't know if they still have them. It's been a while, but the greatest ham and cheese croissants. Oh my gosh, they had them on campus for. I used to get them walking to the hockey rink every morning on the way to practice. Loved them. But she's wondering, do you look for opportunities to lift people, or has it just become a normal habit with initial interactions? So basically leaving people with a better impression of themselves. Is this something that is part of your day that kind of feeds your energy in level 10? Is it something maybe that we need to do more often to help ourselves out?
It is a great question and observation, Terry. I do probably do this more than most. This was one of the things that I learned from my grandfather. I mentioned early on. He was a guy that he would leave every interaction with people feeling better about themselves than when they started. And I gleaned it from him. I think you ask questions, you're interested in other people. They naturally feel kind of an affinity towards you. And these are all, how to win friends and influence people kind of strategies. But I do look for interactions with folks that are kind of out of the norm. And I'll ask questions that are weird, that they make the interaction memorable. Like I'll get on an elevator, and where most people would just stand on the back and look at the numbers and not talk to anybody, I might stand by the door and then turn around and look at everyone in the eye and go, "So I bet you're all wondering why I called this meeting to order." And they'll start laughing. But we have this inside joke that if I see them in the hotel lobby sometime, I'm like, "Next meeting's at 6. I'll see you there." So I'm creating that, but I'm creating it trying to for me, it's just building fun in my day, because if we're not having fun in life, we're doing it wrong. I think that's why we're all put here, to enjoy ourselves, to enjoy each other. And so I'm constantly looking for those. And at the same time, I know that some people that I meet whom I might experience as more like cold and slow, temperature wise and speed wise, they're just the facts. I'm here to do my transaction and move on. I may not get that out of them, but I like to see if they'll engage with me anyway. Yeah. Hopefully that answers the question.
Love it. I will say, when you reference turning around, that if you haven't seen the Geico commercial of, how to not become our parents, you totally are that guy, because
I'm totally that guy.
He looks to that guy. He's like, okay, notice how everyone's facing the other direction. We can turn around.
Yeah, totally.
I love it.
It's so funny.
I love it.
I clearly fit into that demographic apparently, because my kids are like, "Dad, that's so you. That's so you." Like the waiter doesn't need to know your name. You don't need to know their name. Kind of.
Yeah. That's so good. It's so good. Well, I'll start to wrap up. Certainly don't hesitate. I see there's still, 25 some people that are logged on if you have an additional question. But as we wrap up, as I mentioned earlier on, I just want to say that if it was your first or yours, did we do 7 or 8, Adam? Maybe I spaced it. I think we did 7. We skipped August. That's right. Yeah,
we did.
So this was our 7. Yep. But yeah, Tom, my business partner, just posted all of the recordings, the recasts. So if you again, if you had a takeaway, you really enjoyed the session, or you missed one, feel free to jump in there and watch the recording. But yeah, I just want to thank everyone for participating. Again, our goal is to positively impact people's lives, and I hope we did that today and have done so throughout the series. And again, of course, got to throw the pitch in. If there's anything we can do from a technical recruiting perspective for you, for individuals that you know, please have them contact us. We'd love to investigate the opportunity or the possibility of partnering. Adam, thank you very much for the content, for the presentation. Today was probably the only time where I haven't jumped in. I almost felt like jumping in the middle just to give you a chance to get a sip of water or something. But you do such a great job. We appreciate having you here. The reaction is always positive. So I wanted to thank you for the time and all of the sessions that we've had over the last 7 to 8 months.
Well, thank you, Brad. I appreciate it immensely. I love the mission behind Konik. You definitely do positively impact people's lives, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention 50 years is no small feat. 50 years in business. I mean, it is a fraction of a percentage of companies that can last that long. So clearly y'all are doing something right. And I want to give one last just tidbit before we sign off. And that is that, and the engineers in the room will especially appreciate this. Our lives are perfectly engineered for the results we're currently getting. So if we are experiencing level 5 days, level 3 days, level 1 days by the end of the day, it's because our days are engineered that way. Our lives are engineered for the results we're getting. And so if even you do one thing, just look intently at how is my day organized or structured or engineered so that I'm leading and living at a level 10 every day.
I love it. Yep, love it. Well, again, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and we'll certainly stay in close touch. Reach out if we can help. Take care.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks, everybody.